All right, guys. Today we're gonna talk about Uber. I believe that it's the fourth video that I'm uploading about it. I try to be more consistent, and maybe we'll also talk about other topics, just not to bore you out. But it's very important for you to understand that when you come into work, you want to make sure that the company that you work for is something that is worth it for you to, so to speak, find it within the convenience of you wanting to work for them. So today I will explain to you how Uber works as far as what they're built from, and to the best of my ability, because I don't supposedly intend to know more in business than other people online know, and there are people there that are pros, that they went to business school and they could teach you the whole nuance of what a business is and so on. Today I want to talk about the earnings and the percentages of each trip that you take, and how Uber manipulates the system to the point where you may want to think twice whether or not you want to work for them. But let's talk about we'll talk about what is Uber, how is it established, and what's their financial obligation is. Because a lot of times you think of it as like, I just pick up a delivery, I take the package from one place to another, I don't know, I'm getting paid whatever, and it's fine, I don't care. No, those things should matter to you, because at the end of the day, if you work for an employer, you want to make sure that it treats you right. You want to make sure that the integrity level between you, the customer, and the owner, which is basically a publicly traded company. Now, if you don't know what a publicly traded company is basically, let's say you see this table right here. You see there are a lot of slices. Each person owes a certain amount of shares in the company. So imagine you take one slice, that means you have less of a pie, which is 3 point something or whatever. So each person that puts money in that pie, whether it's more cheese or more tomato sauce or more toppings, at the end of the day, they make the pie bigger and bigger and bigger. You can make the crust thicker, and so on. And so think of it this way. Let's say you are a company that's worth $100 billion. You're not really worth $100 billion. You're worth $1 trillion. Because the way it works, when you come in to and open the trading mark where you are, they basically give you a net valuation of whatever 10% you give into the company. The publicly traded company will be worth that money times 10. So this is how much the shares will go for. Now, the reason that I'm saying it is because if it's a company that loaded a lot of debt into their accounts, or they did unwise purchases, or they committed to too much deficit for their company, what they do is they basically include it in their net revenue, where a company is basically, so to speak, not worth $100 billion. And not only that it's not worth $1 trillion, it's actually worth $70 billion, because if they made a mistake with their configuration of their mathematics, they will end up needing to pour money, which ultimately will put them into deficit. Now, the reason that I'm mentioning it is because you see, in publicly traded companies, they usually hire people that are extremely smart. They are very wise. Some of them are people that will overstep other people's lives. I'm not suggesting that they will kill other people or do things that will overstep their humane way of getting things done. What I'm suggesting is more like they find it in their best interest to hire the net revenue for this pie that I was talking about. Now, a lot of times let's say if it's a company that only makes $20 million, and now, publicly traded companies that billions of dollars are poured into their accounts, what they basically do is they take that money and invest it in smaller companies, and they either kill them or they make them bigger and stronger with their own wings and with their own talent that they're able to bring up to the table. And it all depends on what they do and so on. And the reason that I'm saying it is because let's say you owned a company and now you want it to be profitable. So there are two kinds of companies. There are companies that they have shortcuts and they somehow come up with too much money. Then they're considered to be fraudulent, because it's like, how did you come up with so much money? The statistics show that you're making less rides per ratio and less certain things, which is a separate subject. But it's important to bring it up because at the end of the day, companies that usually they take shortcuts, they don't last for too long because they're just considered unworthy and untrusted. And then they're especially if it's a publicly traded company, the shareholders of this company, if it's not a meme stock or it's not a meme company, they will take their money and withdraw it away and basically break down the capital of the company. And the only thing that will have left for this company is their name, is the right for the name, and the amount of workers that they have that could produce more money for this company. Now, the reason that I'm saying it is because, a lot of times you could work for a company and then they'll treat you very, very nice. They'll give you all those bonus checks, or they'll give you exaggerated amounts of money when you first sign in, and then slowly, maturely, they'll bite in from your revenue to the point where you barely made just enough money to the point where you will need to work around the clock for them. And then ultimately you are not a self-employed, you're an employee for a company that avoids your rights for being a regular employee with a W-2 pay, which is basically a tax form that the company distributes into the employee's tax and so on. And then it becomes a legal battlefield, what's considered self-employed, what's not considered self-employed. So it's important for you to know how much money you're going to be making at the first place. Now, a lot of companies became more and more transparent in the last few years, to the point where they can't hide their data. They tell you, like, listen, what happens is this is the amount of money that you're going to be making. If you want it, you could take it, and if not. On the other hand, you should look into how much money your owner makes, because at the end of the day, he's the guy that employs you, and you making the job for him and you getting it done under your time. He just supplies you as a connection man. And this is going to be one of the videos that I want to talk about, and I will leave also the revenue and the information of the amount of money that you could be earning from Uber, and I will break it down with a special calculator online. Because like I said, it's very, very tricky. A lot of analysts or actuaries or even good accountants wouldn't be able to, so to speak, break down the mathematics unless they're like extremely geniuses in math and they got all their maths right, and which is very hard. Like that's why people that are really, really good in math are getting paid a lot of money for this reason. And thankfully today you have applications that could break down the numbers for you. And one of the reasons that I'm saying that Uber is one of the trickiest companies to work with is because they know how to deal with each individual worker in a very, very tricky way. Meaning you could be an employee that like making like, let's say $200 a day, and then they could take like 40% away from you. And if you don't keep track of how much they take from you and you actually bring it up to their attention, they will continue to take money from you in order for them to satisfy the shareholders that are holding this share. Because at the end of the day, each quarter, out of 4 quarters, they have a net revenue of a certain amount of money that they got to bring in. And they got to show net proof income and net profits of how much cost revenue cost them and how much profits. Now, their costs are not defined by, so to speak, me or people that are working for them. Of course, it's part of their charges, but at the end of the day, they get it from the customer. The customer translates it to the restaurant, and a little bit of it he takes it for the customer, for the delivery guy, and then everything else is straight profits for the company. Now, beside that, they have, let's say, actuaries, and they have web developers and cybersecurity companies and mapping services that they got to pay for, and they probably got to pay networks to operate on their networks during busy times. Let's say you're in Manhattan and there's a certain amount of data that is being transferred from one place to another at a certain pace. So companies like gigantic companies basically have a pool hole that they could be able to get more data from an antenna, versus where if another person will try to search into a web, get an IP address or any kind of internet users notification. And the reason that I'm saying it is because it may cost them more money than if you would have paid your regular monthly bill for your phone, let's say. But as a whole, if you consider it as a whole, if they come in with a chunk of money, let's say to Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, and they tell them, listen, we are customers that are paying you right now $150 million or $200 million. Please give us the best services, even though all the lines are busy right now. Like, try to prioritize that internet usage for us in order for us to operate in a normal way. Most probably, those companies are going to give it to them, because why wouldn't they give it to them if they pay that to them and they get it from one customer? They don't need to run after 100 million customers or 86 million customers or whatever it is. So with all the nuance of this conversation, let's just put things into perspective and have a little bit of mindfulness. So Uber is basically a company that is publicly traded, and each shareholder gets a certain amount of percentage from each share that he owns, which means that if the company needs to make $100 million and there's $100 billion for everybody that owns that share, that means that each person will get one worth of $1 for each one of those $100 million that they made. Now, if they say that they made, let's say, $57 million, that means that basically right now they got to pay $43 million as far as their dividends to those shareholders, to the point where if, let's say, they will slack on their revenue on each quarter, and they wouldn't show income of profits, what's going to happen is they're basically going to disappoint the shareholders. And oh my God, the clicking of the Uber keeps on tap to accept the trip, Uber request. It's crazy. You can't even focus on a normal conversation. And I mean, I'm like, not that I'm just telling you how I feel, like, straight up. Like, I don't owe them anything and they don't owe me anything. And on the other hand, if I work for them and everything, like, I understand, like, I gotta set up the obligement of me suggesting, like, I'm willing to work for them and so on. Let's not slide ourselves from the conversation, because it's important to understand the essence of what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is basically if they disappoint on their revenue on a year-to-year base, basically shareholders will take their money away and this company will collapse. Or either someone is going to buy out that company in a private manner, and then he will re-evolve it in a good way that will basically improve their statistics of getting more money or making more revenue. Now, you see, one of the problems with Uber is that it's not a regular company. It's a company that has deep pockets. Now, I don't have any problems with people that have deep pockets. As a matter of fact, I believe that people that have deep pockets are also influencers, and if they know how to give their money in a charitable way and they do good things with it, and their means and their memes are okay with everybody else, so then it's fine with me. So, you're thinking of a company that basically is just trying to net revenue themselves in an unethical way. Now, the reason that I'm saying it is because you see, it may sound absurd what I'm trying to suggest over here, but at the end of the day, if I hope I'm not getting demonetized with YouTube from all kinds of sounds from the side, but I don't think that it will happen, to be quite honest. So yeah, you see from over here that what I'm trying to say, that if the shareholder wouldn't get his dividend or whatever, he's going to dump the company, and then the company is going to go down the drain. So what Uber decided to do, which was very, very smart of them, they bought off small companies. I don't know if it was Uber or not Uber, or Postmates or GrabHub. No, I think Lyft bought GrabHub and Uber bought Postmates, or one or the other. I don't really remember which companies bought which companies. So at the end of the day, what they did is they basically told you, either you work for Postmates, which you're ultimately working for Uber, or you're working for Uber. So they broke up this monopoly to the point where they'll have more customers, restaurants that are operating through the systems of how they get their approvals from other companies and so on. So you see, the problem with this purchase is not that they purchased a company that will be worth in 10 years $20 billion and everybody's going to laugh at them because they bought it off. The problem is that right now with this monopoly is like, you don't really have too much choice with company you're going to want to work. If you want to be in the delivery industry and you're going to want to deliver food to a company, what happens is you don't really have a lot of choices out there, which ultimately, if it's a successful company, they will continue to develop it. And if it's not a successful company, they're just going to die it out and then make Uber last as Uber. So their only monopoly is, technically speaking, is Lyft and I believe Wolt, which is, it doesn't operate in the United States for whichever reason. I don't know exactly what they did and so on. And I think that Uber also owns Didi, which is another Chinese company that basically gave them a net loss of $2.something billion because, Asians are smart. They don't take crap from other people, and they know exactly when they're being used, how much fees they pay, and how much fees they get as far as workers. And the reason that I'm mentioning it is because you see, the problem is that, let's say you work for Uber and you're an employee, and you see a company that bought a certain company that is very successful, and you see a company that bought a company that is not so successful. What happens is, on their charge, let's say out of this $100 billion, if they lost $2.5 billion, it means that right now those $2.5 billion are wiped off, and they really have 97.5 billion or whatever. So now this cost goes down to the worker, that basically covers up for the revenue of a day-to-day base through the deliveries that he does, through the Uber services that he does. Let's say they drive a car, which I don't at this matter. So like what they did is they signed a contract with Tesla to get like 50,000 vehicles from them. And you could see that big companies merging with other big companies, it's a very common concept, and it's a very common, so to speak, statistic to do. At one point, according to the Wall Street Journal, they even wanted to get self-driving cars to the point where like they'll avoid the driver altogether from him being at the wheel. Not to mention that they got to make those workers in Tesla produce the vehicles in a massive way. So, so I will leave all the revenue, all the links for the amounts of money that I get, the charting situation that I was telling you about, the percentage, and how manipulated they are. It's not another company to work for where they're as transparent as possible, and it varies a lot on the type of deliveries that you take from them. To be honest, it's not so simple. It's really not so simple. It's I'm not trying to dirt that company or say bad things about the company. Everybody wants to be successful. The problem starts when these companies are trying to take shortcuts, such as buying big companies, accumulating deficits on other people's pockets, and taking the low worker and accusing him of integrity concerns, and on top of that, they don't acknowledge your work or have some kind of like a professional manager that reaches out to you or calls you. And if you are really, really prioritized to them and you have a big mouth, like, they may even lay you off from the company for making them feel like you are just a burden for them. So, you just, try to use your own wise mind to decide whether or not you actually want to work for this for this company. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I will show you the numbers. I'll try to upload it into. I'll edit all the numbers. I'll break it down to pieces just so you should see it, and I'll write down a chart of exactly how much I made per trip, to the point where I wouldn't be too biased with Uber, and on the other hand, I wouldn't favor them in a point to that will make them look good. And I would lie to you. I'm telling you straight up, honestly, what I feel about them, without any like gimmicks or so to speak, like loopholes that I'm pulling just to make them look bad and stain them. I'll show you messages that they sent me. I'll show you, the good points that they showed me, and everything. Basically, I'm down to show you everything and be as honest as I can. It's important, because at the end of the day, if you're a big publicly traded company, you want to make sure that you work with integrity and honesty, and you want to also work with honest employers, and you don't want to work with an employer that will cut edges on you and so to speak make you feel like you're just another number for them. And not that you need any special treatment or anything, but it's important. That's why you got to know where you're doing. And if you live in a country where capitalism is one of the things that is the motive for their economy, and you're working for basically everybody, so to speak, and you're not really working for the government, or you're working under certain kinds of benefits, or you have any kind of benefits, you're going to want to reevaluate either the career path that you're taking, or you're going to want to going to want to see the work ethics that you do, and how much are you valuable for these companies. And you also want to make sure that if it's a company that, so to speak, wouldn't give you retirement, or wouldn't give you a 401k to match up your money, or so to speak, even though, or so to speak, built your savings, or match up some kind of a certain amount of money that you will put down on the side, you're going to want to reconsider working for them. Because what if today or tomorrow they will disappear? You don't know them anymore. You don't know if they're going to exist, if they'll give you work compensation, nothing. It's a company that is like basically like I wouldn't say a mafia company, but it's like one of the most sophisticated companies with the most sneakiness I've ever seen in my life. And I this is just my feeling. I mean, you tell me, if you work for Uber, you work for Lyft, or you work for one of those big world companies in your country, let me know how it goes, because I actually want to know. I'm thinking to myself, you know what, maybe I'm just bitching about something that has no meaning, or like or it's something that, like, so to speak, doesn't make any sense. Because at the end of the day, you're gonna put all this time, all this effort for a company, and then you found out that you're fooled, or you felt like you were tricked, or you felt like you're misused, or and then you look at this 2 years later, and you thought to yourself, you know what, today I'll wake up and I will do something else, and like you're like, no, I'm so used to it, and like I can't think of something else that I could do, or like I would never find a good employer. You'd be surprised. There are good employers out there, and you want to make sure that the company that you work for is more or less an honest company. Because at the end of the day, if you're gonna work for a company that just became a Silicon Valley meme game company that, like, so to speak, all of a sudden has all this power, and then tomorrow it's gonna collapse, and you'll find yourself like a Lehman Brothers case, or like Zillow or one of those companies that were gigantic and they showed so much strength when they were big, and then they became as small as nothing, or they just filed bankruptcy, or they changed their business tactics. That's what I'm saying. Life has no shortcuts. If you work for an employer, you want to make sure that he treats you nice. You want to see the percentages that he takes from you. If it's a very high percentage, you're going to want to reconsider it. If you don't know how to reach out to your employer, this is just a tip. And there is no one behind the screen that actually listens to you and investigates what you have to say. And it's just one of those companies that hires such a big volume of people that even if they statistically wanted to help you out, they just don't have enough people on the computers to process your complaint. And they just gonna send you emails to say your concern is under investigation and we're gonna look into it, and you don't know how to social shame them. At the end of the day, you're gonna pay a big price for them, because if once you're on the ship and there's a small hole, everybody sinks. It's not like only the guy that created the hole in the ship. And that's why you gotta make it built strong, and you're not allowed to rely on miracles when the waves are very high and there's big inflation around, and people don't really know how things are gonna go ahead of time or behind time, and you don't get compensated for the work that you do based on the place that you live in. Let's say you are living in a place where your bills are $100 a month, and then you only make $30 a month for some reason or another or whatever, and then you expect to live a normal life, and you're just living in deficit more and more and more and more. You may want to consider working for these companies, because at the end of the day, you have companies that are transparent. You have companies and societies and places and countries that you could live in, and you could feel comfortable. You want to, if you're an immigrant that comes in from where you're from, you could leave in the comments. I'd love to know. And if you're a company that if you live in a country that there's ethics and morals there, and you get all those health insurance benefits, and you get subsidies from the government as far as so to speak compensating for this third $70 loss, so then it will be worth it for you. But once you don't have all those benefits of being able to live a normal, nourished life, you might as well live in a country where socialism is what it takes, like Sweden or Denmark, or some Asian countries, or I'm not saying that you should live under dictators and people that are, so to speak, abuse their power as governments and law constituents and stuff. What I'm saying is that if you're gonna want to live a normal life, you might as well live in a place that you'll benefit from that place, if in case you are faulting and you aren't able to, so to speak, have that net income that you could be earning and living a normal life. Because at the end of the day, of course you should be accountable for your deficit, and of course you should understand what it takes and entails to work for these big gigantic companies. And you should also understand that the more workers a person have, the more greedy he becomes, because at the end of the day, if he takes, let's say, $1 from each worker, which is basically out of 100 people, and let's say they made $100 each day, and you have 10 people, let's say, so he made $10 a day. Now, if he becomes greedy, he will take $20 and $30 and $40, and he wouldn't stop just from $40. For all he cares, he will even take $50 and $60 from you, And the reason that I'm saying it is because at the end of the day, you want to work for a transparent company. You want to work for a company that you feel very, very comfortable with. By the way, what do you guys think about this graffiti on the walls? It's so cool. I think it's mad hipster. This is just my opinion. But let's emphasize on Uber. So, to be honest, at this point, I'm kind of feeling like instead of it being a legitimate company that shows true revenue and is transparent with their workers, I tend to be more and more lenient to the point that I'm thinking to myself that the numbers that they showed up doesn't add up to the numbers that they actually actualized in their paperwork, because at the end of the day, I know how many deliveries I canceled, how many deliveries I took, and how much money I made and how much percentage that I will take. And then based on that, I will use an inference to suggest that although I didn't see all the workers around me that went around and picked up packages, I could match up the numbers just as an illustration to understand whether or not they came in with real net revenue, or they just lied to the public shareholders and then they just inflated their market to the point where I wouldn't be minding being that watchdog, that just being straight up transparent. I mean, I don't look homeless, and it doesn't look like I'm missing any money from anybody, So I'll be straight up honest with you. I will try to come up with real actual numbers to figure out what it means to work for these companies and so on. And hopefully my last video will be on Uber, which is going to be the 5th video, and this video is going to be more into, I wouldn't say details, because I know a lot of people don't like too many details, but I'm pretty sure that it will have to do with the charting or the math of each individualized trip and how much percentage you are taking as a whole, and come up with the numbers and see really if it was something that was accommodable, or is it something that in other companies they took advantage over you. And it's gonna be interesting to see it. And the reason that I'm saying it is because you might be sitting behind the screen right now and thinking to yourself, oh well, I have nothing else to do, I might as well work for Uber or Lyft or these big companies, and I'll try to match it up. Hey, good luck, guys.